I really like frameworks. Would you ever coin your own risk framework, like kind of taking inspiration from other things and kind of putting your own process together? Or have you done that already? Because that would be really cool.
It's something that I'm trying to cobble together. And it's like I said, design a lot of the time is subjective, and it goes off of the way we uncover different problems, even who we recruit, making sure that we consciously bring in different types of people, the way that we have thought about design, the way we view the world, everything is quite subjective. But what I really do want to try and do, I guess, is put together some prompts that people can kind of use throughout different parts of their process, whether it's how they ask research questions to try and get the most out of observational research. I've done a lot of LinkedIn posts recently around what are people actually doing versus what do they say they're doing. So perceived behavior versus actual behavior. I think sometimes what we do is in research, we'll ask somebody, well, how do you think you might interact with that thing in the future? Or show me how you click through that on your phone or something. But it's not the same as how they actually use it in their context. So to give you an example, I use quite a lot of apps in the gym. When you use the app on your phone, it looks fine. But then when it's on the floor, sweat's going in your eyes and your hands are blurry, and suddenly you can't use it anymore because it becomes so much harder. Trying to understand in people's context how they actually use something is really, really beneficial. So lots of different nuggets of different things we can think about. To be honest, it's a lot of what I talk about on LinkedIn. Kind of pull that into one place so that if people don't active on LinkedIn, they can have something to potentially help them as much as they can. But it's a work in progress. I just want to try and help people think slightly differently.
Yeah, I think that would be really, really useful. And that's an interesting approach where it's like a toolkit for different parts of the process, maybe even different activities. If a certain part of the process or a certain activity you wanted to inject this pre-mortem or the what if brainstorm, that would be interesting if you had framing prompts around it. That's cool.
I think one of my posts that it got the most amount of traction, I felt like I was having a real, oh my gosh moment, is this real? Is a post I did around Uber, and which people on the call may or may not have seen. If you haven't, it's like pinned at the top of my page. But it was essentially around, like I said, perceived behavior versus actual behavior. And it was, if you were asking me how to use an Uber, it would be like, yeah, I open my phone, I click on it, I request a ride, and off I go. But if you were to watch me how I use one, or if you were to ask me about the last time, you'd see me running around the flat, trying to put my shoes on, finishing my makeup, and even like not rating the driver. And that's huge discrepancies between what our ideal journey is versus our actual journey. As people doing research, and it might not be designers, it might be specific researchers, it completely depends on obviously time, budget, makeup of your team. But the real gold for designing for people, not just users, is so beneficial to businesses because we can then understand, okay, what features are helpful to people, what's not, how do people expect to interact with something, where are we letting them down, where are they getting really frustrated, all of these things. So it's hopefully going to be a lot around, like I said, I'm pretty obsessed with understanding behavioral science, psychology, and I can maybe put some resources together, just share some that I found helpful over the last couple of years. But I'm hopefully going to bring all of this stuff together for different parts of the design process.
Dude, that sounds really, really exciting. So there's one camp of designers that say, hey, everything in like a tested, simulated environment is just what the user wants you to see, or it's not true because like you're showing them some prototype, you're looking at them, there's cameras on, whatever, right? Bright lights. And that camp of designers would prefer to release and then watch afterwards. What do you think about that approach? Like they're like, all the research and sort of asking users is just more educated guesses, but we prefer to release and then see what the data tells us and then watch them actually interact with it in real life when they need to order an Uber, for example. Where do you stand on that?
It depends.
Love it. Thank you. Thank you for calling that out.
Of course, it depends. There's a lot of, on the project, it depends on what you're actually doing. So if you're doing something that is in like financial services, that's going to have a real impact. If it's like a one-stop application that somebody needs to get through and they're only going to do it once, then kind of experimenting and then learning afterwards might not be ideal. If it's something like, for example, Uber, where people most likely are continually coming back again and again to interact with something, that's when you can understand people's habits and behaviors, because they will start to create their own shortcuts and mental models for how they expect to interact with something. And you never know. I mean, to be honest, it depends what it is, because somebody might use it once, realize they hate it, and then never use it again, uninstall the app, see you later. So it depends on, firstly, I think when we're doing research, we don't always have the luxury of doing it up front. That's part of it, unfortunately. Like I said, it's a huge question in the industry about research. But firstly, if you can kind of understand from a framing perspective up front, so instead of saying like, how do do you expect to use this thing? Be like, okay, tell me about the last time you used it. And you might start to get more of that contextual inquiry as to how it fits into their lives, or how they might be interacting it, or what they might be doing. So you can kind of understand a little bit there. In terms of test learning afterwards, obviously data is really important to be able to show you what people are doing. It doesn't show you why they do it. That's the problem with quant. You can kind of see where they might be clicking around, but it doesn't really show you the why as to what they're doing. Depending on what your product or service is, that might be enough. You might see in the journey, the entry points might be fine to say, okay, well, we think that they jumped from there to there because of that reason. But if you're really trying to understand from a qualitative perspective, you really need to be kind of speaking to people rather than trying to make your own assumptions, because we will all make our own assumptions otherwise, and we will all inject our own biases around what we think needs to be improved.
Yeah, that makes sense. We have some questions that have come in. Let me just rattle off a few. What are some of the most effective methodologies used in generating unhappy paths? And regarding what ifs, how do we know when it's enough?
I wish I could say,
Want to listen to the full conversation? Click the video on screen now. Subscribe to the channel if you want to join us live. Oh, wait. Okay, fine, you don't have to join us for the live stream, but if you like stuff like this, then click that subscribe button. I'll see you on the inside. Bye!